Hi, and good evening to everybody. Thank you for joining me this evening. Um, Tonight, I'm just interviewing myself basically, or really kind of telling you a little bit about me. As you've especially to the newer members of my group, I've not really kind of introduced myself. So I thought I'd use this opportunity just to give you a brief insight into my life and how I became a healer and a holistic therapist. But before we start, if you'd like to share, like this stream, and also comment, please do. If I'm waffling on, ask me any questions, whether it's to do with healing, whether it's experience that you may have, if you can connect with what I'm saying tonight. And if you are using StreamYard for the first time, if you can give StreamYard your permission to use your name. Otherwise, if you comment, it will just come up in the comments as Facebook user. So my name is Dawn Hall, and I own Rainbow Zen Therapies. I've been a holistic therapist, healer. I've been a healer for over 20 years and a holistic therapist for 17, coming up 18 years now. So as a child, I would say that I wasn't born into a family of psychics, healers. I was kind of the first in my family, and I believe as a child, I was the middle one of three girls, and I always, I suppose, saw myself as piggy in the middle. Often thought I was the hard done by one. But in fact, actually, it's how we as children perceive things. We were all treated exactly the same. But I did have like sort of a few experiences growing up that kind of I couldn't explain at the time. But since getting into the spiritual side and the spiritual way of life, I kind of can answer those questions now. So as a little girl, and I keep being reminded by my mum, I was a gymnast and a trampolinist, so I was always stood on my head. I always watched the television upside down, so I was kind of from an early age, I suppose you could say, viewing the world from a different viewpoint, seeing the world differently to other people. I was really quiet. I was shy, and at the age of 14, I got a little Saturday job in the market in our town, Newton Abbot. Now, for being somebody who's shy, I wouldn't say boo to a goose, this wasn't really kind of the ideal work environment, because we had the banter from the market traders. And I kind of had to well, I suppose I worked there every Saturday over a period of 2-3 years. And over that time, I really had to kind of stand on my own 2 feet and had to learn to give back the banter that I was getting. Otherwise, I wouldn't have survived. And really I really thank that time of my life for giving me that, I suppose, helped me grow in my own confidence, because I wasn't a very confident person. And I suppose as an adult, I haven't always been, well, still aren't as confident as I could be. So it gave me a good start in life. And the people that I worked for, I looked at them as my second parents. They were all an older couple, and I really enjoyed that work. But in the meantime, when I was left school, I trained, didn't really know what I wanted to do. And I kind of suppose I followed in my older sister's footsteps and trained as a nursery nurse. And it was during one of my lectures, I think we were doing something, I think it was about sibling rivalry. We were having a lecture about sibling rivalry. And I kind of like sort of, when I'm being taught, when I'm learning something, I quite often, and I have all the way even through like sort of learning like the anatomy and physiology side of things when I was doing the holistic training, kind of used my own life experiences to kind of get a grip on what I was learning. And we were on about this sibling rivalry. And it kind of really dawned on me then that I was actually jealous of my younger sister. Now, my younger sister, as we were growing up, she was chronic asthmatic. And the first time I remember really was when I was about 5 years old and I woke up one morning and her bed was empty. And she had been rushed into hospital in the middle of the night. So kind of as an adult, like sort of related my abandonment issues as an adult to when my sister had left. That's one of the abandonment things that came from there. So anyway, I recognized that I was jealous of my sister. And why would anybody be jealous of somebody who was chronically ill? And I think that's sort of my take on it as a child was, all I saw was that my mum was giving my sister attention and not me. So I kind of gave my mum a merry dance all the way up to senior school and cried to go to school every day in primary school. And I think it was because she would be having like sort of 1 week at school and then she'd have to have 2 weeks off because she was so poorly. And so as a child, I processed that as I was being pushed out the way, I was being made to go to school, and saw that, and like sort of I became jealous of her illness, really. But as like sort of life goes on, that kind of was a helpful insight to help me kind of understand my own thought processes and the way that I grew up thinking kind of illogically as I see it now, but as a child, it was quite logical the way that I was thinking these things. So then I like sort of got into my first job after leaving college was I became a classroom assistant at the school that I trained. But then I became, at the age of 18, my first proper job. I was an assistant matron at a boys' boarding school where it was a live-in job. And I thought, oh, yes, great. Time to leave home, get a bit of independence. Hard work, working, obviously, we were on duty practically 24 hours a day with only roughly 3 hours a day free for our own, you know, what we could do what we wanted in those 3 hours. But it was kind of when I became the headmaster's nanny, I kind of saw a different side to life, I suppose. Now, the headmaster was obviously brought up in this environment. He was brought up with servants, nannies, and kind of I felt very, I suppose it was my first experience as a young adult of how different life was for some people and how I suppose people, and I'm not saying that everybody's the same, but in my experience, this was, you know, they had money, they came from a well-to-do family, but it was the way that they treated the people working for them. And I didn't agree with it. And I fought back. I kind of called him out on it, which didn't really go down too well, which led me to being sacked because I spoke my truth. And a lot of people in this day and age, quite honestly, are afraid to speak their truth. And I think when we fear that truth speaking, we stop ourselves because we're fearful of how others are going to react to us, how people will judge us, and how people will see us. But now, in my 50s, I see it as actually when you speak your truth, you're being true to yourself. How others, if you can do it from a heart-centered place, and you do it with truth in your heart and not being vindictive with it, I think that sort of, you're actually being true and honest to yourself, which goes a long way. It's the other person, if they have issues with it, it's their issues, basically. So that was my first experience. But while working there, I had what I would call now my first psychic experience. And one night I woke up and I shot bolt right up in bed, awake. I don't know what woke me up. Can't remember dreaming, can't remember hearing any noises, but I kind of listened, because obviously I had students' bedrooms around me, so I was in charge of one side of the building, the boarders. So I didn't hear any boarders calling out. And the following day, it was my afternoon off, and I'd gone down into the market to say hello, as I quite often did on a Saturday, to the lady and gentleman that I used to work for in the market. And I saw her sister working there, and I didn't always get on with her, so I left it. Well, later that day, I received a phone call to say that the lady had passed away. So I immediately went up to their house and to sort of give my condolences. And it was while talking to the gentleman, he said that she'd passed at 3:00 in the morning, which was exactly the same time as that I had woken up. So I didn't really kind of think too. I just thought it was a bit weird, bit of a coincidence. Didn't really kind of think too much of it. But kind of later on, as I started, excuse me, my development, it became apparent to me that she would have visited me at that time to say her goodbyes, and that's what woke me up. Anyway, I married and had 2 children, and we were living in Torquay at the time. And this is when I had my second experience, or psychic experience. And before we had the children, when we bought the house, it had a sitting tenant. It was my then husband's great uncle, and eventually he passed away. And it was on the morning of his funeral, and we had converted the whole, because it was a 3-story house, and we'd converted the whole of the top story into a kind of a little flatlet for him. So we put in a bathroom, kitchen, diner, and he had his bedroom there. And on the morning of his funeral, there was an almighty crash from upstairs. And I went up to see what it was. And his bathroom mirror had fallen off the wall and smashed into the sink. And it wasn't until later on that afternoon, I also noticed that my watch had stopped. Because I kind of made a joke to my husband, and he kind of pushed it off as silly nonsense, didn't agree with anything like that. But I'd kind of sort of all through my life, I'd always had a feeling that there was something else out there. There was something that was out there that we couldn't explain. So anyway, when we had the second child, we decided to move back up to my hometown. Now, this is where I do believe that we were being guided by spirit, and spirit do come in or work in mysterious ways. And we'd put an offer on the house that I'm living in right now, and it's been refused. Obviously, they wanted a higher price, and we couldn't afford it at that time. Well, anyway, they eventually accepted, and we moved in. Well, 11 months later, my husband left. So I was with 2 young children, a just 4-year-old and an 18-month-old. And my life was turned upside down. And I was suffering ill nerves. Didn't really know what I was going to do. I was a young mum on my own. I'd been abandoned, as I saw it, left. And my whole external world was in turmoil, and I sort of was suffering with stress, anxiety, depression. And at that time, my oldest daughter, she had started nursery, and there was 4 of us mums, and they were all the oldest of the children. We used to meet up once a week. And we got talking one day about clairvoyance and the supernatural. And 3 of them, they'd all been to see clairvoyance and had their palms read and had their tarot cards read. And I'd never done it. And it had always kind of fascinated me. So we decided as a foursome that we would save up and we would go and book in and see a tarot reader. Well, anyway, one of the group, she contacted me one week and she said that she was going to go up to the local spiritualist church. Would I like to go along? Well, I'd never been to a spiritualist church. So I thought, yeah, why not? So along I went with her. And even though like sort of I was having all these internal feelings, my external world was in chaos, in turmoil, when I walked into that church, it wasn't what was being said by the medium. It wasn't about the messages that people were receiving. It was a feeling that I had within me. And the only way that I could explain what this feeling was an inner peace. And I thought, my God, it's the first time I can't remember ever feeling at this inner peace within me. And it was so warm and loving. And I thought, my God, if I can feel this once a week, I'm going to keep coming. So I decided to carry on going to the church on my own. And I think it was about the 3rd or 4th week that I went to the church that I actually finally got a message, and it was from my grandmother. And she commented on, at the time, I kept having these feelings around my shoulders and around my back. And it was kind of like a pressure, but a warmth at the same time. And the medium explained to me that it was my grandmother putting her arms around me and giving me a hug and letting me know that she was there supporting me. And I do believe it was her or spirit. She died about a month after we moved into the house. So it was quite raw still, her passing. But it was a comfort at the same time to know that I was being looked after at a time where I just didn't know where life was going to take me. I got to this stage where if it wasn't for my children, I don't know how I got up in the morning. If it wasn't for them, that their needs and that I had to contend with and to look after, I don't know really kind of what I would have done. Now, at the time, the person that was running the church was Mark Hartshorn, and I decided to go along to the development group. They were running like an open circle, and I thought I need something. I need something to keep my mind off of what was going on in my life at the time. So I started going to the development circle and developing like sort of mediumistic skills, psychic. We did lots of things like we did bits with tarot. We did like ribbon readings and flower readings. And I kind of started getting a thirst. I needed to know more. I needed to learn more. So I'd buy books. I read copious amounts of books on spiritual development, psychic development, all sorts, biographies from healers. And it was, I kind of like sort of, I just couldn't get enough knowledge. I couldn't absorb enough knowledge. And I kind of dabbled in a lot of things then. So like sort of using a lot of like sort of dabble with crystals, kind of finding my feet to see where my journey was going to take me. So we did a little bit of crystals, but I found that I couldn't personally work with crystals. I couldn't work as I developed over time. I found that crystals were too powerful for me. I kind of think at that time I was hypersensitive to energies, any energy I was really hypersensitive to. And even sitting in a room when somebody came to do a talk on crystals, I had to leave because it made me feel really sick. So we did like sort of dowsing with pendulums, learned like sort of the ribbon readings and what the colours mean. And I think like sort of in those early days, it was kind of like sort of learning different tools of the trade. So like sort of if you're a carpenter, you learn to use different tools like chisels, saws, hacksaws, you know, screwdrivers and things. So looking at it from the spiritual aspect, learning all these little tools, kind of you have an arsenal of things to fall back on. So and I really enjoyed this, and like sort of I used to started going to like sort of the Wednesday medium evenings quite regularly. And then Mark's sister moved into the area and she didn't know anybody, and she had a little boy the same age as mine, so we became really good friends. And she was an exceptional tarot card reader, and she would bring her little boy over to play, and she taught me how to read the tarot cards intuitively, not what the actual meanings of the cards were, but how to intuit the symbols that were in the cards. And then I remember sitting at the table one day, and we were like sort of playing with the cards, and there was a book beside us, and this book just lifted off of the table and slammed back down, and I thought, my God. And then from then on, I started having lots of experiences in the house. So pictures would fall off the walls. My saucepans that were on a shelf in the pantry. I can remember that up in my bedroom one day, I had this almighty crash. I came down and all my saucepans had fallen off the shelf and landed out in the back garden. I had the video recorder, because obviously back then it was video recorders and not DVD players. My video recorder would just rewind and fast forward on its own. And my oldest, she'd just started school. And I can remember standing one evening in the kitchen, doing her packed lunch ready for the day after. And out the corner of my eye, I could see her come in through the dining room door and sit in the kitchen doorway. And I didn't turn to her, and I just said to her, oh, come on, look, you need to go back to bed now. You know, you should be asleep. And when I turned, there was nobody there. And I thought, my goodness me, I knew it was her. And also, I would always leave the living room door open, just ajar at night, so that if either of the children cried out, I could hear them. And quite often I would see a shadow dart past the doorway. And Samara used to have a habit of running past the door and hiding in the coat rack. And I shouted to her one night and I said, if you don't go back up to bed by the time I come out, you're going to be into trouble. Anyway, I opened the door and there was nobody there. So I had all this stuff going on. And I remember waking up in one night in bed and looking at my fingers. It was pitch black and my fingers were glowing green and blue. And I thought, my goodness me, what's it? And it did frighten me a little bit to start with, because I hadn't like sort of experienced that before. And talking to obviously the teachers at the church, they said it was a good sign of a healer, like sort of the blue and the greens as like sort of healing colours. But I also had another experience one night where I used to like sort of, obviously it was like a kind of an out of body experience. And I'd woken up one night and I had felt woken up with a bump on my nose, and kind of I opened my eyes and I was looking at the ceiling, and I was on the ceiling. And as I turned over, I could see my body sleeping in my bed. So immediately, though, like sort of obviously I come back in, like sort of once I recognised what was happening, and that kind of frightened me as well. And it was almost like there was so much going on in the house, bumps and with the babysitter, especially when I used to go out, I could always tell what kind of evening the babysitter had by how many cigarette butts were in the ashtray. And she would quite often like sort of get a bit spooked in my house, because she would say, well, I don't know what's going on with your printer. She said, because the printer keeps like sort of revving up as though it's going to print something. And I said, well, it's not even switched on. So she got scared as well. So I'd got my teacher around just to have a look to see like sort of whether I'd picked up a spirit or whether we had poltergeist or whatever. I didn't know. I was still in my own early days of learning So anyway, when he came around and had a look, and he said, well, it's actually you are, because I'm like sort of learning and I'm opening up, I wasn't actually channeling the energy I was creating. So the energy was kind of doing willy-nilly around the house. So it kind of gave me the premise now I needed to start working and like sort of learning how to manage that energy. And even though I would say I mean, all this while I was still kind of hypersensitive to negative energies, other people's energies, like sort of, especially going into town, going into supermarkets, it would make me headachy, make me feel sick. And no matter how much grounding and protection that I would do, didn't really ever seem to have much effect. So I kind of got afraid of eating too much because it would make me vomit. That's how bad these energies would affect me. So I kind of started pushing myself, like sort of in the response. I'd like sort of the children would go to bed and I would sit and I would meditate, put the music going. I dabbled with like it was kind of a semi-trance work, I suppose, where I would like kind of meditate. I would ask a question and then I would get an answer. And I started recording this. And when because I couldn't always remember what the answers were coming. So I thought, oh, I need to record this. And this particular night I was doing it. I had a bit of a shock when I come back to listening to it because it actually came out as a man's voice. So he was actually one of my guides, an Indian. He came through, and that was kind of one of my only times that I ever really saw one of my guides. I don't tend to see my guides. I tend to feel, I get a sense of when they're around and the energies that they give to me. That's how I know that my guides are around. So anyway, when my teacher, he broke away from the church and he set up his own group, and that's when I became a spiritual healer. I did my training with the Corinthians. That's the group that he set up with, and we did training with the Corinthians. So I became a spiritual healer just after my third child was born. And it was then I thought, this is where I need to be. I kind of felt at home, really at home with it. And it's kind of felt as though this was my calling. And I always say, like, sort of, if I had stayed married, if my husband hadn't left me, I wouldn't be the person, I wouldn't be working in this field because he didn't believe in it. So I always do say that that was my first spiritual awakening, was through my divorce. And even my children, both the older two, they often heard their names being called. My daughter especially would feel her bed being pushed down at night and get scared. As an adult now growing up with it still frightens her a little bit. But I know that she is a healer. I know that she is really in tune with spirit, and she quite often brings home what we call lost souls, those souls that haven't crossed over. So she kind of picks them up and brings them home to me for me to like sort of pass over into the light. So that's just another little part of the work that I do. So when Oliver, my youngest, he was born with special needs. So I was given a special baby to care for. When he was 3, I had to give up my job as a nursery nurse. I'd gone back to work in the school that I originally trained in as a supply nursery nurse and a classroom assistant. And because Oliver was having so many hospital appointments, I retrained. I thought, well, I need something to go. What can go with my healing? Something that I can work from doing at home that will work around his hospital appointments. So I looked into training as an aromatherapist, and I trained as an aromatherapist and a massage therapist with Garamia, which Garamia is a complementary foundation, complementary medical school that was down in Paynton. I'm not sure whether it's still there. This is going back to the early 200s. So I trained there and had some really weird experiences there as well, because that was kind of a haunted place, and I would hear footsteps and see things quite a lot down there as well. So, and again, the energy there kind of didn't like me being there either, because at the same time as I'd started training there, I trained as a Reiki practitioner. Now, I'd always kind of been on the edge with the Reiki, and I'd kind of been put off. We'd had a talk from a Reiki master a few years prior, and there was a lot of ego with this guy, and I'd been put off with what he was saying. And it was that we had some quite vulnerable young people in the centre, and it was kind of, I didn't think it had come from the right place. So, and he was kind of pertaining that Reiki is the only one true healing modality out there. And I thought, well, no, it's not really. I'd had immediate healing results especially with my dad. My dad was one of these, I didn't know where I was coming from, but like sort of, I always said my dad was psychic anyway, but he didn't believe in any of it. And until one day when he used to have recurring kidney stones. And this particular day, Mum had rung up to say that Dad had got his kidney stones again, and it got so bad that he couldn't urinate. So I said, okay, I'll come up and give him some healing. And I thought, well, he isn't going to accept this because he doesn't believe in it. Anyway, I think he was in so much pain that he would have accepted anything. So I did some work on him just for 10 minutes, just like sort of, wasn't even touching him, just like sort of brushing my hands down from his kidneys down, just for 10 minutes. And he went and passed a kidney stone with no pain, and he couldn't believe that. And normally after passing, he gets a lot of after pain as well. The following day, he passed another stone with no pain. And from that day, my dad became a believer. So, and from then on, he would always like sort of ask me to make up a potion for his bad knees, or if he came over, he'd ask me to put my hands on his knees to give him a little bit of healing. So I turned his belief around. And I don't think, if it hadn't have happened to him, I don't think he would have been a believer still. But anyway, that's another story. So this guy had really kind of put me off the Reiki side of it until somebody at the centre had become a Reiki master, and they offered at doing Reiki classes for the people down at the centre. And I thought, okay, I'll go along, see what it's like, what is the difference. And yes, I kind of really resonated with it. And even today, I still get asked, what's the difference between spiritual healing and Reiki healing? Now, for me personally, no difference at all. The only difference is that when we're being trained, we are attuned with different symbols. So we have 4 bodies. We have a spiritual body, we have a physical, a mental body, and an emotional body. And we are attuned with symbols which are placed into our aura and into the palms of our hands when we're learning. We're attuned with these symbols to use on these different bodies. And that, to me, is the only difference. There is no difference in the amount of power that we channel through. We channel from the same source. But there is kind of a more of a story with the Reiki. Obviously, it comes from, it's a Japanese tradition, which Dr. Mikao Yusui founded hundreds of years ago out in Japan, and he was a Buddhist monk. and he'd gone on to the mountain to do a 21-day fasting. So he was fasting and meditating for 21 days. And apparently on the 21st day, he was attuned with this light coming through his body, and he was given the symbol. And that is how Reiki originated. So, but while I was being taught this Reiki, one thing really struck me was that nothing was actually being shared about how to protect your own energy from working with somebody else, or even protecting your client's energy. Nothing on how, like, sort of the energy systems of the body work. Now, coming from the spiritual aspect, I'd already learnt these things, and I thought it was quite important thing to do, because actually you're mixing your energy with somebody else's energy, and you're quite liable as a healer to pick up energy from your client that they may be releasing, and vice versa, they can be picking up on from you as well. So I devised, when I started teaching my Reiki, I devised a short course to start with. I do a small amount of like the grounding and the protection within my Reiki teachings, but I felt it needed something more basic. So I devised a course called the Introduction to Healing. Now, these foundation steps, as I call them, aren't just for healers. They are for anybody that wants to work on the spiritual level. So whether you're working as a medium, whether you're working as a psychic, a tarot reader, whatever, they are basics. So you're learning about your grounding and your protection. You're learning about the chakra energy centers. You're learning about your auric field, where and how to channel that energy from, the power of the mind. So I started teaching that to my prospective students, if they wanted to go on to do the healing, to do the introduction first, to see whether they were comfortable with it. They saw how I worked, but also I could see whether they were coming from the right place. When I'm teaching my Reiki now, no disrespects to any other Reiki masters who may teach in a different way. This is how I work. I work over a 4-week period. So Reiki 1 is all about healing the self. And we do a 21-day self-healing process. So within that 21 days, you'll have specific hand placements to place over in different areas of your body to bring in that healing energy, to help you adjust to the new energies that will be coming in once you're attuned to the Reiki vibrations. So I do mine over a period of 4 weeks. Now, you're quite often may see advertised online, and other Reiki masters may do it over a weekend or over a day. I prefer to do it over the 4-week course, because on week 1, we start your first day of your Reiki attunement. So I am with you for that full 21 days. Because especially if you haven't had any, it is my belief, if you haven't done any like sort of self-work spiritually on yourself before, and you come in straight into doing it, you can have some real big shifts with Reiki, or with any healing. You can have some real big shifts, emotional shifts, stuff that you've stuck in inside or swallowed down inside and are holding deep within. They then start coming to the surface to be released, because it's things that you no longer need to be holding on to within your own life. So that's what I like to do when I'm working. I work with you over a 4-week period. So anyway, so in this time, over the period of a few years, I was teaching, I met and married my second husband. And I suppose my oldest one was now living with her father. And I had my 2 boys, my youngest one. And this, over a period of time, this relationship, this marriage became emotionally and mentally abusive, which kind of took me into a very dark place. And it didn't only just affect me, it affected the boys too. So everything in the beginning was fine. Couldn't do enough for us, like sort of. And I think, I've really found somebody here. They started on their spiritual journey. And after a very short space of time, they gave up because they thought they knew it all. And for me, I don't know it all. We never know it all. We're always learning. There's always something that we can learn from somebody we can learn from and pass on. We never stop learning in life. Life is a lesson. So anyway, I kind of had to stop with all my work. I had to put a hold on my gifts. So I kind of stuffed my gifts down, suppressed them. I stopped working because they didn't like me working, especially with male clients. And to kind of keep a peaceful home, I kind of allowed it to happen. And I use the word allowed because part of me allowed it to happen. Maybe if we look at it on sort of a reincarnation things, we brought people into our lives mainly kind of for either us to learn from them or for them to learn from us. And maybe this was a lesson that I needed to learn for the person that I am today and for the people that I help today. So I did get into a very dark hole, very dark place. And really the only way that I could save myself was to really kind of start pulling myself back together again. And I know that if I'd stayed there, I don't know what would have happened today. So I had to save myself, and I had to find that strength from somewhere to end my marriage. And that's was 9 years ago. So for 9 years, I've kind of been pulling myself back and healing myself. And I don't think we ever stop healing ourselves from things. I think the more we heal, the more deeper things come to the surface that maybe we've already worked on, but there's residue still there that we need working on. And it's a continual work in progress. So I kind of had a breakdown after, I think it was 9 months after he left. I had a nervous breakdown. And at that same time, I lost a lot of friends because coming from a healer point of view, I knew that I had to heal the whole of me, not just part of me and paper over the cracks. I had to kind of allow myself to feel what I was feeling, feel the raw emotion, allow myself to cry if I needed to cry, and not be afraid of doing it in front of the children, not kind of holding back and stuffing that emotion back inside me, because I knew from the work that I'd done previously that would make me iller, make my body more dis-ease. My body would be at dis-ease even more. So I allowed myself to feel the emotion, and some people couldn't be around me. And I lost my best friend of 15 years through it. But I do believe now, I know, at the time that's another bereavement that you're yearning for and mourning for. You're being left again. But looking at it now that I've gone past that phase and I've healed from that phase, she wasn't supposed to be on my journey where I'm going now and where I am now today, and the work that I've done. So through this healing, I had to obviously I did go to the GP because I was in a bit of a state. She knew that I was a holistic therapist, and she actually gave me the choice. She said, well, you can either go on to medication, which I kind of didn't really want to do, or she said, I'm going to give you 6 weeks so you can go away and try and sort yourself out, come back and see me and see, we'll go from there. So as you arm me with a load of leaflets and like sort of websites, which I did join one, which was a cognitive behavioral therapy site, which was really, really helpful and helped me to kind of understand my behaviors and my thought processes at that time. But I was thinking on the way home from the doctors, you've got the tools that you've learned over the period of years of you being a healer and working with other people. You've got enough knowledge to help yourself. So I kind of had to go back to the basics. So back to my basic introduction to the healing process. So it kind of learning, again, getting into that habit of grounding and protecting myself, making sure my chakras were aligned, making sure that I sat, meditated, opened, allowed that energy to come in, that healing energy to flood my body. And through doing that, I actually then put it down in words, and I produced the book. I wrote my first book. Now, this was kind of a healing process for me. So it's a beginner's guide to self-development and healing, 5 basic steps to retain, energize, and source your own energy. And it was kind of another kind of healing process for me. One of the greatest things that we say as a healer and as a therapist is like sort of when you've got things on your mind is to write them down. If you've got issues coming up, write them down rather than allowing it to go on the treadmill of your mind, because our mind can play some funny tricks with us. So it's allowing yourself to process your thoughts. And by writing them down, we're releasing them. So writing the book was kind of a release for me. I kind of wrote it kind of for me and published it because it was something that I'd done on my own. And it's been a good healer, is like sort of, especially to sort of my students as well. It's been a good tool for them, a basic tool. But it's not, like I said, with the introduction to healing training, it's not something, you don't have to become a healer. You don't have to want to become a healer or a medium or whatever to use the tools in this. I use the tools in this book to get me out of my breakdown, to give me something to focus on, something that I was doing for myself, for my own well-being. And I used the tools that are in this book to help me get through that. So as a therapist, over the last, I would say about 6-7 years ago, I was also looking into things that would help my son. He was diagnosed with autism, and I was looking for ways to help him mentally. And I came across Orgonite, and I don't know whether any of you have heard of Orgonite. Orgonite is a device which attracts in your electromagnetic energy that surrounds us all, which is emitted from any electrical equipment, so laptops, Wi-Fi's, mobile phones, televisions, telephones, and it attracts in the negative energy. So it's a resin-based material, and it's mixed with metal and copper, which is what we call the orgone material, and it attracts in that negative energy. And when we're making the orgonite, when it's cooling down, it frictions. So it causes a friction on the metals, which draws in that negative energy. But it also has crystals in it. Now, going back to what I was saying earlier on, when I was hypersensitive, coming out of the second divorce and rehealing myself, I find that I'm not as sensitive in that way. My healing energy has kind of notched up. So I feel I'm working on a different level than what I was working before. So I don't feel the negative energies around me like I used to. It doesn't affect me like that. So I am now able to sit and work with crystals. So I have a couple here that are just to show you the type of thing that I make these. So I come across this orgonite, didn't really know whether it would work. So I bought myself a piece and I started using it with Oliver. but I also started using it with my clients. And one client, he was having a lot of psychological problems. So I used to put this pyramid up by his head to help like sort of calm any issues down. And he also had a really rare condition which gave him a lot of pain most of the time. In this particular day he came to me, he could barely sit lay on the couch because it was he was in too much pain. So I put this orgonite device down by his hip, and in 2 minutes he was dead still, no pain. And I thought, oh goodness me, there's something in there. So I kind of looked into it, and I've been making it now for 6 or 7 years. Oliver, he's got big ones underneath his bed. He's got them obviously in front of his television in his Xbox. And I gridded his bed. I made some little round ones and I stuck them to his bed. So he was kind of sleeping in a grid of them. And at the time, he was having medication at night to help him calm down and to stop the fuzz, as he would say, in his head. And I would say over a 6-month period, we gradually weaned him off his nighttime medication. So I'm not saying that it was definitely the orgonite that done it, but he hasn't had nighttime medication for those reasons since. So it has helped to calm his energies down. And he does wear an orgonite. He wears shungite around his neck to help his energies during the day. So I would go on to say, like, sort of my real passion, I would say, like, sort of with learning, like, sort of the aromatherapy and the massage and the reflexology. I've kind of come full circle and really my passion, I would say, is the healing side of things. And I would, in the last 5 or 6 years, I noticed that a lot of my clients were coming to me with pain-related stress symptoms. And I found that I was kind of counselling them as well. So I trained as well as a stress and anxiety management coach. So it's kind of teaching different stress techniques or anti-stress techniques and tips that the client could put into their everyday lives and take away with them. So my passion is the healing. I love the healing and the reflexology and joining the two. And over the years, I've kind of, every healer, every therapist is different. And we all have our own unique way of working. And the way that I work with my orgonite. I have orgonite chakra discs that I place on the chakra points of the body. I test the chakras first before I'm working to see whether there are any blockages with your chakra energy systems. And if you're unaware of what an energy system is or what a chakra is, we have 7 major ones which run up the spine. So from the base of the spine to the crown of the head. They're non-physical, but they do actually affect the physical body. And in each area where there's a chakra, there's an endocrine gland, and the glands release the hormones within our bodies to do the jobs and to help our bodies work fluently. But if there's any blockages within the energy system, then over a period of time, it will affect that endocrine system, which will then lead to an ache or pain within the physical body. That's how I perceive it to be. Other people may think differently, but this is my thought process and what I believe. So I work with my orgonite, but I also work with especially like the reflexology. I've devised my own chakra oils. So each chakra has a chakra oil, which I place on the feet at the end of the reflexology treatment and work on those chakra points of the feet. So to help to balance and to harmonize. So when we're looking at complementary therapy, complementary means that we complement other therapies. So if you're under a GP and you're on medication, we complement it. We're not either or, we complement. So I am a member of the CMA, which is the Complementary Medical Association of Great Britain. Well, it's worldwide now, but it did start off in Great Britain. So I am a member of that organisation. And luckily, because of that organisation, because I work with mental health and pain, I have been luckily enough been able to continue to work in this last lockdown. And I work with anybody, children up to elderly, and it varies what people want. You know, you might go through, and it used to come in stages. So like sort of for a month, I would get nothing but massage treatments. Then it would be healing, then it would be reflexology, but there's kinds of mingles all around. So when you come to me for whatever treatment, I always like to do a consultation first, because you might have something in mind that you would like to have done, whether it be reflexology or massage. But through that consultation, I will be able to gauge what would benefit you the most. So whether that be talking therapy, whether that be reflexology, whether that be Reiki or massage, or even a combination. So my favourite combination is, I did one today, which was half an hour Reiki, followed by half an hour of reflexology. And the two go really, really well together. I am able now, because of obviously working in lockdown, we've had to, a lot of therapists and things, and well, even if you're not a therapist, have had to kind of work in different ways. And we being able to work over, like I'm talking to you now, through Zoom, FaceTime or Skype, because we have to remember that energy is energy. We're all made up of energy. So energy follows thought. Wherever you place your attention, energy follow that. So if you put your attention, you've got, say, an itch on your toe, you're focusing on that itch. Sometimes that itch becomes more. If you have a tickle in your throat, the more attention you put to try and stop you from coughing, you want to cough even more. So energy is a great way of healing over the internet. You know, we do distant healing anyway. So if, I have a healing book. So if anybody wants to join or put their name down on the healing book, then please message. If anybody's got any questions, please do ask any questions. I'm more than happy to answer if you have any queries. I was asked, I was talking to some friends during the week, and one of them asked me, what kind of reactions do people get? And that's a very good question, because we're all different. So we kind of have different reactions to things. So I will go with the healing. So for me, when I'm healing somebody, you'll quite often get muscle twitches, and that's really common. Some will say it's just the body relaxing. So like sort of at night when you're going to sleep, you might get a twitch in your leg and it's just the body's way of relaxing. To me, it's a good indication that the energy is flowing through. Another sign for me that people get embarrassed about is their tummy rumbles. And for me, tummy rumbling is a really good sign that the energy is flowing through that system. Now, I have had some weird, well, I wouldn't say weird, unusual reactions. So burping, coughing, crying, laughing, they're all normal. Although like sort of when people start to well up, they'll try and like your immediate reaction to that when you're crying, going to openly cry in front of somebody, especially if you don't know them very well, you want to stifle those tears or swallow them back down. But that is kind of, your tears are there because you have an emotion there that is ready to be released. So it's coming up in the way of tears. So it's really, I'd say to all my clients, you know, if you have these emotions, please don't feel embarrassed. Just allow them to be released because they're no longer serving you. And it's the same with burping, crying or coughing. Don't stifle it. If you just naturally do what your body is telling you to do during that session. I have had a lady pass out on me. She had a reaction. I was actually like sort of helping her with a broken elbow, and I was giving her some healing, but I'd mixed her up some oils because she was having a long car journey that she was needing to drive in a few weeks after. And she had it was like she passed out on me, which frightened me because I hadn't had that done to me before. But it was just her body's way of reacting. I've had recently a gentleman come to healing with me, and he starts shaking his head, and they started getting really violent, like sort of really, and it was almost watching. It was almost like something was saying, "No, I don't want this. I don't want this." It was almost like there was another person within him not wanting the healing because they needed to be released. And then his body's violently started to shake. It was almost like he was having an epileptic fit on my bed or on my couch, which again frightened me because I hadn't experienced that. I've experienced the leg twitches and the leg kicks, but not like this. And it's just his body was releasing the trauma of what he'd been through. So everybody is different. When they come to me, some people fall asleep, and I always say that I'm not doing my job properly if my client doesn't fall asleep. We have the odd snorer, and that is fine. Don't be embarrassed. So that's my journey, and I continue seeing myself going forward as a healer, a teacher, and what I have really missed in this past year is getting out there to the mind, body, and spirit shows and meeting new people, and saying about the mind, body, and spirit shows. I had one lady, it must be about 7-8 years ago, and I was down at a healing festival in Torquay, and this lady, and I was doing Reiki and reflexology taster sessions, and this lady come up to me. She said, "Oh, I'd really love a reflexology treatment." She said, "But I won't feel anything." And she'd had a spinal operation 9 years prior, which had left her no feeling from the waist down. And she taught herself to walk, which was an amazing thing to see, especially if she couldn't feel anything. Anyway, I said, "Well, just jump up." It's like sort of a bit of relaxation. So she jumped up on the couch, and I started doing, and she started to cry. And I kind of thought, oh, you always question, am I doing something wrong? Am I, like sort of. And I said, "Are you okay?" And she said, "Yeah." She said, "You are sending," she said, "I'm getting electric shocks up my feet and up my legs." And she said, "I haven't had any sensation in my feet or legs since my operation 9 years ago." And that was an amazing thing for her. And she continued to come and see me over a few years. And in that time, every time that she came to see me, she would have more sensation within her feet. And that sensation would last during the day. She would get pins and needles, something that she hadn't felt for 9 years. And she eventually, I put her in contact with my chiropractor, and between us, over a period of time, she did actually stop using her leg calipers and splints, and she was walking freely. So that when I have clients like that, and that's one thing that really warms my heart, is like sort of the difference you see in people when they come to you. They come in through your front door, and you can see the tiredness in their eyes and the pain in their bodies. And then when they leave, you can see it's just been lifted, and they look lighter and they look brighter. And for me, that is my best medicine, knowing that, I've helped somebody. It's a privilege, and I feel very humbled to be able to, or I feel really humbled that they've actually chosen me to work with them, and that will always stay with me. It's a real privilege to work with people, and I love my job. It's as simple as that. I love my work. I love my job. And with that, we're coming to the end. And I would like to thank you so much for joining me this evening, or joining me on the replay, and allowing me to babble on about my life and how I came into the spiritual side of work and my life, and how it has helped me on my journey. And I still continue to work and to grow, and I still continue to learn. And just because I am qualified in healing, I'm qualified in holistics, I still train. I still have my development. I still I joined a development group last year in lockdown, an online one with a wonderful teacher. And to me, it's the discipline of keeping up with my work, keeping up with channeling the energies and learning different things, and having that connection with spirit is wonderful. And if anybody would like a treatment, whether that's virtual or face-to-face, then please contact me. You can either email me at rainbowsendtherapies@yahoo.co.uk, or you can visit my website, which is rainbowsendtherapies.co.uk, or you can contact me through Facebook, my YouTube channel. This will be going up on my YouTube channel later, or through my group, which is De-Stress and Heal Yourself with Dawn Hall. So thank you once again for joining me, and I wish you a happy journey in your own lives. Good night, and God bless.